And we're live. Hello, hello, and welcome. This is Fearless Flight. Um, and we today have the honor of having the second crew edition of our Fearless Flight live show. Our fearless leader, Captain Ron, is at LAX airport flying with a VIP student. And so I'm joined tonight by our lovely flight attendant, Diane. Hi, Diane.
Hi.
And Captain Eric. Hey, Eric.
How are you guys?
Well, I can tell you that up here, I know you guys are always sizzling in the heat, but we have quite the summery temperatures up here as well. Like it's super balmy. Um, Speaking of balmy, I was really hoping to get to Air Hollywood later on this week, because usually it's kind of chilly around the Toronto at this time of year. But the big news for the day, for tonight, and for the Air Hollywood class is that due to unforeseen scheduling issues, we unfortunately do not have the use of the studios as planned on the Friday. So for those of you who have signed up, we've already contacted and reached out to you. If you're still thinking of it, you can join the live stream, but we won't be at Air Hollywood. It'll be a Zoom webinar on the Friday. The flight on the Saturday is going as planned. Captain Ron will fly with the people that have registered and have tickets to fly from Burbank to Sacramento and back. Might be a little late for you if you really want to fly. Of course, you can still sign up and get yourself the Southwest tickets, but I looked at those prices and yeah, let's just say Southwest knows that you're desperate. So the big news is we still will have the class, just not at Hollywood as planned on Friday, October 25th. Instead, we'll be coming to you live in webinar form for those of you who have registered, or if you're still interested in registering, I will put in the link to the live stream. Yeah, Eric and Diane, I'm so sad that I'm gonna miss you guys. I was looking forward to coming down there.
We were looking forward to having you.
We were too, and as we know that your poor wife, who I refer to as the president, needed some stress relief. This is not helping her at all.
Yes. Well, that's life, right? Unfortunately,
Yeah.
we can't control everything, or fortunately, maybe, because maybe not everything we want to control is in our own best interest. So, but what we can control is the fact that we have a great show for you planned tonight. We have a couple of topics to talk about, a couple of questions from our Facebook group, Birds of a Feather. And yeah, so Eric, I think you wanted to say something as well to our audience about the flight in Burbank on Saturday, right? So
Yes, I wanted to say I had the whole fish called Wanda apology memorized, if you guys remember that, but I've forgotten it. But speaking for myself and a little bit for Flight Attendant Diane, who's perfectly capable of speaking for herself, I really regret that we will not be coming to the 301 flight. The reason being because of the, as Dieter mentioned, the ability for us to secure the Air Hollywood studio fell through, and the size of the group is easily within reach of Ron to be able to handle the whole thing. And while even if there's one person, their success makes us very, very happy. Flight Attendant Diane and I are out of pocket for every one of those deals for flights, hotels, meals. anything else we forgot to waste money on. So it can get a
You're
little
true
pricey.
volunteers.
Yeah, it can get a little pricey. And so we're saving our chips for what we hope will be another class soon. But
Sure.
for those of you who are counting on seeing us there, as we promised, and we're not there, my sincerest apologies that we're not going to appear.
And my apologies too, because as Eric said, we absolutely love flying with you all. And if it had been the 2-day with the Air Hollywood component, it would have made a little bit different and a little bit easier for us to do all that. But we do, as Eric said, we're going to cash in our chips, and we will wait for another opportunity to fly with everyone again, because we do want that more than anything. Yeah.
But yeah, I know. Thank you for that. I know that those classes are really super powerful. We'll definitely have our webinar, and I know Eric, maybe if you're around, I'm sure would love to have you on the webinar. Then I'm not sure if you're available or not, but regardless, we are gonna have the flight on Saturday still, so no worries about that if you're signed up for that. And I want to kind of like switch gears to a story that happened like 4 days ago in Austin, and I'm not sure why. It must have been a slow news day, but those news it even reached up to Canada is what I'm trying to say here, because usually we don't. Most of these stories don't get reported up here, but so basically it was an incident, and I'll let you talk about it, Captain Eric. But the message I really wanna emphasize with this story is the reason the system exists and the flawless functioning of that system that was on display. So now with that, I'll turn it over to you, Eric.
So as Dieter started off with, this is what we call a bad week for us and a good week for you, because the 24-hour news cycle didn't give you anything additionally to worry about. And so we had to root around and do some honest work to find stories. But what Dieter's referring to is, look it up, just 4 days ago, a 737, American 737, was approaching Austin Bergstrom Airport at the same time a privately flown Cessna 182 was doing as well. And Dieter has a picture of the Cessna 182 there. It's a fairly capable, high-performance 4-seat airplane. And the media always reports these as a near miss. Whoa, that was close. Well, the FAA would call this a loss of separation, whereby the lateral separation of the airplanes was not what it should have been for the airspace environment it was in. And both the controllers they were calling the 182, but they had also advised the American airplane that the Cessna 182 was coming. And as Dieter referred to the technology on board the 737, as is on all airliners now, called TCAS, TCAS, I think, Traffic Collision and Avoidance System, was installed and picking up the 182 and gave what's called an RA, a resolution advisory, telling, in this case, it told the 737 crew to climb. And it doesn't just say climb, it shows a bandwidth on the vertical speed indicator of the climb rate it wants for the separation. It won't say to scramble for space as hard as you can go if you don't have to, but it shows a green band for you to start your climb into, and that will show the rate of climb that they want the pilots to comply with for the traffic avoidance. And it was likely very smoothly flown by the pilots and not even knowable to any of the people in the back. And as soon as they essentially popped up to give themselves a separation. I'm sure the controllers then gave them a descent to continue for their approach and arrival. But because I'm a sap and a bleeding heart, I feel a little sorry for the guy in the 182 because he's going to have the FAA guys knocking on his door, and he's probably going to get a license suspension, and he's probably going to get a real big fine, and he's probably going to have to go to re-education camp before he's even allowed to play with balloons in his yard again. So he will suffer some serious repercussions for wandering through that airspace without the clearance he was supposed to have. Oh, Dieter, you're muted.
Thank you. I actually have a question that just popped up. And the question is, whose fault was it?
Oh, no, that's easy. The guy in the 182.
Okay.
The American airliner was cleared to be there, and the guy in the 182 was on his own personal scenic trip, and he was not supposed to be enjoying that particular scenery at that particular point in time.
And that's just me kind of like clarifying the difference between, general aviation or and commercial aviation. They intersect obviously at those airports, and while we know that you guys have a very stringent routine in terms of your currency and everything, maybe that is not the same for the general aviation. Like, just because you have the money to have an airplane or have access to an airplane doesn't mean you're going to be flying all the time. And so therefore it might be a little rusty around the edges. And that's why these systems exist, to make it easier and safer for all of us. I grew up, my uncle was a airline pilot and also privately had a Cessna as well, and he was always telling me about the celebrities that have all their airplanes and only go out flying so often. And of course, when you were going to some kind of flight school or re-education and you're a celebrity or you're known, maybe the standards are a little bit different. So anyway, he had not a lot of love left for these people. And that was a long time ago, long before TCAS. So
there was I want to say it was that same situation, Dita. There was a celebrity, and Eric, you probably remember this. And I can't remember who the pilot, I don't think it was Harrison Ford, but they were landing somewhere in Colorado, and they landed on the taxiway, which was parallel to the runway. And I don't remember who that was. I'd have to Google it to find out. But it talks about exactly what you're talking about, on the numbers of hours of
but that's why these systems are designed to catch all of that stuff. And this is a perfect example of the system working exactly as it should, keeping everyone safe, even the daydreamers.
There is some responsibility incumbent on people flying privately to have themselves trained for the type of operation they're conducting. If they're just flying off a farm field and in their local area and all that stuff, it's great. But if they want to operate in and out of the big airports and stuff, they need to be well versed in that. And the controllers assume when they show up and talk to them that until they're proven otherwise, that they are well versed in that they understand the airspace, what they have to do, and so on and so forth. And what Diane's talking about is actually not that uncommon, is of people landing on taxiways, even though the paint is and the markings and the lighting and everything else is grossly different. And generally that doesn't upset or cause any problem for the people landing on the taxiway, but it takes several years off the lives of the other airplanes taxiing on the taxiway when it becomes evident that an airplane is approaching and is in fact going to land on the taxiway, even though they're there. Yeah, that takes some years off their lives. Big time.
You see the news that an aircraft has had distress, and no criticism here, but if they have to land on a freeway, because that, I mean, and there are obviously numerous incidences of pilots that have had very bad situations with their aircraft and have to land, and they're landing on a freeway. And I feel the same way. I said, can you imagine driving along and say, whoa, that's not a car,
It's not a
It's definitely not even a truck.
Yeah.
So,
I do have another piece of trivia, although I think it happened in the US. I think it happened in the last couple of weeks. A husband and wife were flying back home. I'm not sure. The husband sustained some kind of cardiac episode. I think he might even have died. Actually, you're nodding yes. So
I saw that. Yes, you're
Yeah.
right. Keep going.
and so
keep going.
the crazy thing was that his wife, who wasn't crazy about flying really at the best of times, so she had no experience, and air traffic control actually remotely talked her through landing that airplane safely and without incident. And it just blew my mind. I mean, that's like, holy.
She clearly had had enough time in the airplane and paid attention to what was going on to have an idea of the basics, and the controllers could talk to her, realizing that she was stressed out of her mind with what had happened, and make sure she got the I's dotted and the T's crossed, the big stuff done. But clearly she had some capability. And as far as I know, she landed the airplane without incident.
Yeah,
Not a problem.
that's pretty
They have
fascinating.
And I should add, on an airport where you're supposed to land them.
Yeah. Yeah, but for her to
Not
have
on a
that
taxiway.
mind is really kind of amazing.
Yes, it was.
Not only did she, I mean, she may have been, I mean, she had to be concerned that her husband had perhaps died, and try to land the airplane at the same time. It's not like
not dying herself.
It's not like one or the other. Here
Right.
she's dealing with two massive traumas, mental traumas. So yeah.
I know that was just an amazing story. That's just mind blowing. So I think I have two more questions. One, I'll just ask you, Diane. So John Ilya, one of our amazing people that really took their own fate in their own hands, attended the monthly group coaching calls, put in the work, did the Cleared for Takeoff 201 course, and shows up pretty much every month consistently. He is now, I think it was his 9th flight or so, but he posted a question in the Birds of a Feather group, and I thought, what a great question. So he noticed, why are there still ashtrays on the lavatory doors, and sometimes even still in like
they're in the armrests.
Yeah.
They could be, depending on the aircraft, they could be on the fuselage in the wind by the window, underneath the window or something. Oh yeah, that's an excellent question. And actually I got that question numerous times in the 5+ years I was flying. And Eric can address this even better than I can, but the answer to that is the airplanes are certified for a certain weight. And Eric, please jump in if I ever misspeak at all. I don't even know if I said that right. But anyway, so there's a piece of paper, a certification on each aircraft, so that when the pilots get on, the captain gets on, they check it to make sure that it's certified and airworthy and all those other things. But the deal with the certification is that plane is certified for that weight, for all of the things on that plane. And if it got certified, whenever it got certified and had ashtrays in it, then that's the weight of that plane. And so if anybody starts thinking about removing the ashtrays, that changes the weight of the plane and makes it not certified. And the hoops and the expense and time too, Eric, right? The time that's involved in recertifying the plane is just astronomical. And from our perspective, some of our planes, and I flew for SkyWest, I can say that now. We had ovens. We had ovens in the galleys. We don't use the ovens. They're just there, kind of. You can't even use them as a flower holder, but they can't remove the ovens for the same reason.
Yep.
They're huge. They take up a big space on certain aircrafts that we fly. But we can't do anything about them because once you do that, again, you change the weight and the certification of the aircraft. So whether it's an oven, an ashtray, we have carts that we use, as you see flight attendants going up and down the aisles with our beverage carts and such. If for any reason we have a plane that we don't have passengers on, it's a repositioning flight or something, everything still has to be there. The carts have to be there. The atlases where we have in our galley that are removable. So if they're empty, but they still have to be there because that's how the plane is certified. How'd I do, Eric?
Very well. You actually answered got all of it, all of the possible minutiae of that answer. And even though the ashtray is maybe only weighs 9 grams,
Right.
The back part of what you answered is the airplane was certified with that door that has an ashtray in it. And if the airlines want to just say, hey, FAA, do you mind if we just throw another door on here? And they go, well, yes, we do. So the whole new door has to go through a certification process and the weight and every other kind of piece of approval stuff to put the new door on without the 9-gram ashtray in it. So in that case, it's just the paper trail and the cost of it is huge. But the other things Diane is talking about, the ovens and the storage containers, even if they're empty, if they're going to be off the airplane has to be reweighed, reflecting the change in the weight and the change in the center of gravity and what's called the basic operating weight of the airplane. You can't just take that stuff on and take it off and put it on willy-nilly, because each airplane has that specific center of gravity and weight. So even though the ashtrays aren't so much the weight, the recertification process of putting a door in without the ashtray is hugely expensive. And the bad part of me, because you guys know that I have self-control issues, the bad part of me wants to say the reason the airlines leave that in there is to sucker you into smoking in the lab so they can fine you into the Stone Age and throw you off. That's
and then you make it more miserable for us.
It's not actually why they do it. But if you did smoke in there, yeah, you'd be as much trouble as that 182 guy who flew through the Austin airspace, or it'd be about a tie between who's going to be out more money.
Right. Okay. So I have not amendment, but I have a corollary to the question about the ashtrays and the weight and all the things we're talking about. And Eric, you can deal with this better than I can as well. But I have a lot of passengers, and you can see it on forums online and stuff, where passengers have questions about, they say, well, my carry-on bag is going to be on the plane one way or the other. It doesn't matter whether it's in the overhead bin or in cargo. And the answer to that is it does make a difference. Mm-hmm. And so take it, Eric.
There's a passenger allowance for passenger weight and bag weight. Sorry about that. Mr. Spam is calling me. There's a passenger allowance for bag weight and passenger weight, but the flight attendants aren't kidding when they say that has to be under seat or in the overhead so that the aisle's clear so that you can race out of there for an evacuation. That's why you're not allowed to hold your bag, even if it's a Gucci bag full of money. You're going to have to put it in the overhead or put it down there and keep your feet on it the whole time. And that's why they require you to do that. And we do have a weight, an average weight for a winter passenger, average weight for a summer passenger, plus one for male, one for female, and an average baggage allowance that can be carried. And all the stuff that goes in the cargo compartments, the weight of that is all known now on computer check-in, so that the weight and balance form is very, very accurate. And obviously people are trying to carry their even their pet Cape buffalo on board, because if you check the buffalo, it's going to be very expensive. So everybody wants to carry, I'm exaggerating once again, but everyone wants to carry everything they possibly can on the airplane to avoid that expense. And if you lose it at the door and they check it and don't charge you, well, great.
But what I'm getting at,
It has to be, the weight has to be accounted for.
Yeah, but what my observation, the question that I've gotten from passengers, well, it doesn't matter whether it's in cargo or in the overhead bin, it's still on the plane. The thing is, it does matter, because as Eric said, there's certain assumptions of how many pounds are going to be in the overhead bin. And on different aircraft, on my aircraft, the cargo is all the way in the back. So all of the bags and the cargo that's checked is in the back of the plane. And so if I only have 3 passengers on my plane, or 10, instead of a full plane with full complement of their carry-on bags, then that makes a difference on literally where the passengers sit, where their bags are stored in an overhead bin, because we can't have the plane tail heavy, we can't have it forward heavy. So yes, it does, all of that stuff is on the same plane, but it does matter whether it's in cargo or in the overhead bin. So please don't insult the flight attendants with regard, well, it's all on the same plane, whether it's in the overhead bin or cargo. That's not true. It depends on where the cargo is on that aircraft, how many people we have, what the bins are full. All of those things matter in order for Captain Eric to fly safely and get us all someplace safe.
Yeah, weight distribution, right? So
exactly what she's talking about. The center of gravity of the airplane has to be within an envelope or the loaded moment. And once in a while, Captain Ron would put up a slide showing the more things change, the more they stay the same. Yeah. He's got one picture of an overloaded mule cart with crops and agricultural stuff in the back, and the poor mule's up in the air.
Right.
The cart's down on the ground, the mule's 10 feet up in the air. And then he's got a picture of a FedEx MD-11 in Memphis. That's a famous picture that was misloaded or loaded improperly, and the tail is on the ground and the nose is way up in the air, which is bad and expensive.
So, and that, I mean, those kinds of things are exaggerated for a passenger, but it's not the same. You all need to understand that it really does make a difference. So anyway, so
cool. Well, I think that answered the question about the mysterious
more answer than he wanted, probably.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that, because I'm sure that question has run through a lot of people's minds. Why is that stuff even still on there? So, and the other question, it's funny. So that could be a question that actually Rebecca might have asked. How do like sudden changes in weather, like high pressure, low pressure, do you guys have that when you are, building your flight plans? Is that information available, and does it even matter? High pressure systems, low pressure systems, and how you guys navigate that? And no, this question was not from Don Calvert, but
sure. Well, I'm surprised it's not. Well, if it had been from Don, no, I could answer Don. I'm forgetting, I'm drawing a blank now on who it is. Jim Duke has never asked a question that I've been able to answer. So anything that I can ever answer will be a huge improvement. But no, the weather, the pressure systems per se don't matter, except they dictate weather and weather patterns and winds. And so we're planning with the resultant, what's being kicked off from the pressure systems. High pressure is generally good weather. Low pressure generally means more clouds, thunderstorms, that kind of thing. And depending on how close or tight they are together, there can be quite a bit of weather between them and produce turbulence. So we're looking at the resultant of what they do, what they create, rather than looking at just the pressure system by itself.
okay, cool. I think, yeah, that was really how I interpreted that question as well. But it's always changing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's for sure. So it's really not that easy to forecast, but you guys have the best available information before and during the flight, so you can even adjust on the fly if things are changing.
Sure.
Um, yeah. Okay, well that was it from my end. Unless you guys have anything.
Got that turbulence thing that you were going to
Oh
talk
yeah. So I just a last plug, and Diane will jump in on it. But about 10 days ago or so now, an Air Canada 787-900 left Vancouver bound for Singapore, and about 2 hours out over the water in the ETOPS airspace, they hit severe turbulence, and got pounded. And the interesting part of that is the number of injuries on the airplane was zero, not any. I can't get my hand in front of the camera. There it is. Not any injuries, because everybody's being good and had their seatbelt on. But food and drinks and everything, as one passenger said, it just kept dripping coffee on her head the whole way there, coming off the headliner. I mean, it was a mess. So they continued because the airplane was structurally fine. People wanted to go, and it was fine with dispatch. Now, it probably wasn't fine with the aircraft cleaners when they saw the airplane after everybody got off in Singapore. That would have been a bad day to show up at work and be an aircraft cleaner. But the point is, the airplane was unharmed and the passengers were unharmed. And it was quite a brutal ride for a few minutes. All the food that was remaining available to eat was stuck on the roof, or the headliner, as we call it.
or on the floor. Ew.
Yeah.
Somewhere. Yeah. Oh, gross. Yeah. The only thing I want to add to that, and we've talked about it so often about keeping your seatbelt fastened, and I don't know if I ever expanded on that a little bit, but during the course of your flight, if the captain has turned the seatbelt sign off and it's off, and you can unbuckle your seatbelt, we always tell you to. The announcement is to keep your seatbelt buckled, even though the seatbelt sign's off. But then when the seatbelt sign goes back on, we're required to do, like we say, we talk the talk and then walk the walk. We're required to do a sweep, what we call a sweep. And I think I've used that term before. And that's one of us will, or two, however many, how big the plane is. And we're required to walk up and down the aisle to double check, make sure that everybody has buckled their seatbelt. That's one of the things we're required to do. So when we're looking, and we're, we don't want to wake you up, but if you've got a big blankie on you, and I have to see whether or not you're buckled up, just for the reason that Eric was talking about, that when this stuff comes up. The other thing that I don't think I've mentioned is when we talk about having your seatbelt securely fastened, just because your seatbelt is fastened doesn't mean that you're not going to go flying around. If you barely have it buckled and it's just kind of hanging across your lap, that gives you a great deal of play to have your body move through vertical space and horizontal space. And so that's not going to be that helpful. It will be somewhat helpful, but it's not going to be that helpful. And the same thing goes for parents when you're flying with children. So often I'm a grandma of 3, and I appreciate how difficult it can be to keep that kid buckled up. But the actuality is sometimes their seatbelt is so loose that if something happens, the child can literally slip underneath the seatbelt or slip out up. And that's not safe either. So we are looking at your seatbelts being securely fastened. And one last thing is that's why the armrests have to be down. The armrests have to be down for takeoff, for surface movement, ideally all throughout the flight, because the armrest is keeping that aisle passenger from flying into the aisle and maybe into somebody else, or for themselves to be injured. So again, we're not trying to be power hunger and everything. It's all safety. So that armrest needs to be down to keep you, the passenger, in the very safest configuration.
I'm glad Flight Attendant Diane handled all these serious questions tonight. And I don't know why I was thinking about it, but I was thinking about, just in conclusion, that Air Canada plane that hit the severe turbulence. Some of you may have heard of the 5-second rule. There is no 5-second rule in the airplane, and it's not even a 1-second rule. Never pick up anything off the floor of the airplane and put it in your mouth. That's a very bad idea.
Yeah, thanks for that image, Eric. I
Sure.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Don't walk barefoot anywhere.
No.
Oh,
Oh, don't do
okay,
that.
that's it.
No.
Yeah, but you know what? You travel in different cultures, and that is a far more a sight that you see a lot more often.
Sure.
That's absolutely true.
If you want the flight attendants to talk about you, then walk barefoot in the aisle.
Mhm.
The object of every single gossip circle that you can imagine. Just saying. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. So I think next week we will have Captain Ron back. Should be a good one because he's been flying with
Yeah.
people, so probably
That's
have
nice.
one or two guests to report back their experience. And I believe the week after we might actually reschedule to the Wednesday for some reason.
I wonder. Oh,
If we may compete with a bigger
there's a bigger news story. There will be a bigger news story going on.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Diane. Thank you, Eric. And I'm looking forward to seeing